Okay, today I'm going to go over the studio configuration operation, and this is going to be useful whether you're working here in the studio or in the sanctuary with this studio configuration. So first thing we're going to take a look at is the studio pedestal, and this is how you should see it when you come into the room, into the studio. It should be in its lowest position, and it's got two locking bars that you're going to need to find underneath. There is one here, and you might need to lift up just a little bit on the steering column to get it to disengage. And there we go, and it just swings down. And on the opposite side, there is a second locking bar, and we'll disengage that. The primary purpose of this is to make sure that the column does not ever move in any direction, particularly if you are loading or unloading the payload. Right now we have it charged to fit this particular payload, but if you were to try to remove the prompter or fit some different lens on top of the pedestal, you'd want to make sure that you had those locking bars engaged first. Otherwise, the column will lurch forward into the upward position, and you don't want that. So now that we have the column unlocked, do double check that you have your friction lock undone, and that is it here, and it is disengaged. So now we can lift the pedestal to whatever height we need, and ideally what you're going to do is try to find eye level of your talent, and you'll want to move the lens into that position. So we'll adjust the pedestal height, let's say maybe right about there. So we'll say that's eye level with our talent. So you'll notice that when I let go of the pedestal, it does not move in any direction up or down. That's because it is counterbalanced for this particular payload. If you wanted to ensure that it was not going to move in any direction, maybe you were going to make some moves or something like that, there is that friction lock at the bottom that you can use, and you just turn it over, and now the column will not move up or down, and that will work with a plus or minus 20-pound payload. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off for now so that we can move freely again. Another thing for you as an operator is there is a drag control for the column here, and that's on the right side of the friction lock. So you turn it to the right to add more resistance, and it's going to be more difficult to move the column that way. And you turn it to the left to reduce. So that's going to make it move much freer. All right, and then also the pedestal has a steering column, steering wheel that you can see. That's what we've been using to lift and push it down to position. But it also controls the direction that the pedestal will move. So right now we're in crab mode, which you can see down here crab mode is depressed, and that's the steering function where all three sets of wheels are going to be locked together in the same position and controlled by the steering column. And you'll see there's actually two silver indicators, one here, and on the flip side there's another one. And that's going to indicate what direction the crab steering is set. So if I want to move the pedestal to the left or the right, which we would call trucking if you were, if the director was talking to you, they told you to truck left, you'd want to make sure your steering wheel is set like that, and we can just give it a nice pull, and we truck the shot left, and we can truck back to the right as well. The other function is the dolly function, and that would be moving the other direction. So we'd want to turn the steering wheel this way, and now we can dolly out, which would be pull the pedestal towards me, or dolly in, which would be move closer to your subject. And there is a steer function of steering. There is crab and steer. In order to change over, you want to make sure that you've lined up one of these silver indicators with the red line on the pedestal That's very important that you line that up first. And then you'll step down onto the steer, and now we're in steer mode. And so the back two wheels will lock in place, and the front wheel will be attached to the steering wheel. So now we can make some different maneuvers if we need to. Usually in a show, though, you would want to stick with the crab steering. And now we'll take a look at the pan tilt head. I will note that I do have the intercom headset on the top level of the pedestal. Make sure you don't hook it to the steering wheel, because that will be something that moves. So when you come to use the pan tilt head, there is a platform locking bolt here on the front of the pan tilt head. And if you look on behind it, there's a little lever that you can kind of wiggle and pull, and that's going to disengage that platform bolt. And now you can tilt and pan freely, assuming that you have your locks disengaged, which you should always store it disengaged. And so they are at this moment. And now we can tilt freely and we can pan freely. So, you know, you have pan and tilt. That's something that you're probably very familiar with already, commands. The two new ones today would be truck, which would be physically moving the pedestal to the left or the right, and dolly, which would be physically moving the pedestal closer to the subject if you're dollying in, or pulling closer towards you, the operator, if you're dollying out. And another command would be ped up and ped down. If the director asks you to ped down, you would lower the pedestal. And if he asks you to ped up, you would raise the pedestal. So we'll take a look closer here at the pan tilt head. You do have the two locks, as I mentioned before. And the top one is tilt. You can move it to the left to lock it in place, and you'll not be able to tilt. And then you can use the bottom one to lock your pan, which is your left to right motion. And then you'll notice that there is dual drag controls on this particular head. So you have separate drag or friction for left pan and for right pan, and separate drag control for your tilt in each direction. And there's another tilt drag control here on the front of the head. So it really lets you customize the head to whatever is most comfortable for you. Also note, this is something you should not need to adjust, but generally it should be set for you. There is a platform balancing screw located here above the locks. So if you turn it, it's going to actually shift the load, the camera lens assembly, forward or backwards on the pan tilt head. So if you find that it is off balance, it's wanting to fall in one direction or another, you can adjust that platform balancing screw there. So we'll briefly take a look here at the studio lens control. It's just slightly different from what you're used to in our regular setup. You do have your touch sensitive rocker switch here. So to the left is zoom out, to the right you'd zoom in. I think if I tilt you can see it a little better. There is a ENG and production switch here. You should not need to adjust that because our particular setup, it is only set up with one intercom channel, so you don't need to adjust that. You do have a Z-Track here, which is going to allow you to dial in a maximum and minimum zoom for the lens. So right now I have it set to only zoom out to this particular level, which is located here. And here's your max tight here. So we could adjust that by turning the switch on or off, and now we're free to move the zoom further beyond those limits. And that's really good for studio stuff. In here, I don't want to zoom out past the level of what the set is, so I set the Z-Tracker to limit the lens on the wide angle. So now I will not hopefully zoom out further than what the set will allow. And you also have a double extender on this lens, which is controlled by this switch here. And I'll let you look at the TV monitor what it does. It activates a doubler in front of the lens that will allow you to extend your shot just a little bit more. Do note that you will lose some brightness out of your shot if you do that. So, and the underside of the zoom control, the zoom demand, you have two buttons. One on top is your return, and it's just two little white buttons there. So that's your return video. Right now I don't have anything in the return channel. And the bottom button is your talkback mic for your intercom. And again, we'll just go over that very quickly. On this particular model, you do have your director volume here, intercom volume, and then we have program audio, which is generally whatever's going on out in the sanctuary or in the house, and you have individual control of that. So you want to make sure that this talk switch also is in the middle position, the off position, and that will allow the zoom demand button to function for you. So anyway, that's the studio operations. When you're done, make sure that you do put the platform lock pin back in place. So that's in place. And you want to make sure you lower the pedestal back down when the show's all over and put your locking bars back on. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching.